Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Total Attorneys Power Chat. Today we are speaking with Andrea Cannavina, who for the last 10 years has spoken to firms of all sizes about how to effectively manage and utilize digital staff, resources, and technology as part of their firm. Today we're speaking to her about keeping your sanity and your safety in a virtual world. Outsourcing and using digital resources has become an ever-popular topic lately, but it's important to remember how to effectively manage these resources and also keep you and your clients' data safe and secure. So today, thank you so much, Andrea, for joining us. We're very, very excited about this session and look forward to all the insights that you'll be sharing with us today.
Well, great. Thank you so very much, Chelsea, and to Total Attorneys for, of course, inviting me to give this presentation today. I truly do appreciate being able to effectively get out what some of the techniques and tips and things that I've learned over the past 10 years to as many people as possible. So thank you for allowing me to share that with your audience.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you. And just a couple quick housekeeping notes before we jump into today's session. If you have any issues during today's session and you need help, you can email powerchathelp@totalattorneys.com, and we will be answering questions at the end of the session. For your questions, you can email powerchat@totalattorneys, and we'll make sure to cover those at the end of today's presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first slide is about managing your digital world, staying organized, protecting yourself, and balancing accessibility. So Andrea, let's go ahead and jump into some of the main talking points today.
Okay, great. And really those are the three talking points. Those are the things that I want to cover in enough detail and from enough aspects that people can really consider it for themselves, because what it really is all about is you have to do the managing. So there is effort, there is things that are required on your part in order for any practice to get organized. So in that organization, you're going to be able to process information faster, you're going to be able to do things quicker, and you're going to be able to actually be less stressed and sleep better at night, because you're going to know that you're protecting yourself, your client's information, and you're also going to understand that you need to have reasonable accessibility to your actual physical person versus having as much accessibility to your practice and the important information that you need in order for you to effectively, I call it your workflow, in order for you to keep the flow moving whenever you need to and from wherever you need to. That is the best possible way. So for you to have access to that information securely from anywhere, but not necessarily for everybody who needs to or wishes to have contact to you to be able to instantaneously get in touch with you. So I'm actually going to start off today by quoting Henry Thoreau. It is, "I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by conscious endeavor." That's conscious endeavor.
That is a great quote.
Isn't that a great one? I just found it for today's presentation. So I think conscious, I think focusing, I think thought, I think consideration, and I think endeavor. I think act, do, try. So if I really kind of wanted to say, if you're on here and you're listening, or you're listening to this at a different time, if you're not really ready or to committing the time necessary to actively take time to consider how you run your practice, then really, you know what, come back to this at another time. Find a time where you have a little bit of time to really commit to this, because if you're not going to commit to it, to the conscious endeavor, then you know what, you kind of wasting time, and none of us has anything. I hate waste, and especially time, because that's what we all have. So don't waste your time. Come back at this at another time.
Absolutely. I think
right.
That's a great point, Andrea. You know, none of the changes that we talk about in our monthly sessions are easy. You know, they all require effort, but the reward can be great if you do take the time and take that in and make that investment to put these processes in place, and you're going to reap the rewards long after, you know, that day or two is gone and passed that you spent putting these solutions in place and really getting organized.
Right. Well, you know what it is, and you say day or two, and that's, you know, in checking my notes here, I also want to cover, it can be a day or two, or it really can be little chunks of applied focus. You come across something and you realize this is something repetitive that you do all the time, and every single time you encounter it, you kind of pause for a little bit. Well, those are the types of things that you really want to try to pay attention to and put systems in place And instead of you having to think about it each time, you now are just processing it. And when you get to processing, it's kind of like a habit. You don't really think about it. It just kind of gets done, and everything, it all moves smoother. But it doesn't necessarily have to be this huge, huge commitment of time of even a day or two. But what it has to, it's more a commitment to the fact that you are going to move forward, even if that is in little chunks. You're going to take that one pile on the corner of your desk, and you're going to figure out what you actually don't need anymore. Instead of bringing the mail in and letting it go everywhere, you're going to actually put a garbage pail right by the door. And you know what? Nothing actually makes it past the garbage pail that doesn't necessarily have to be there. These are little steps that you can take, but over time they actually build up to huge, huge time savers for a lot of people.
Absolutely, and going back to that point about consciousness as well, just being aware of your day and being aware of those touch points, and really when you come across something that you're doing over and over again, making a mental note of it and then looking for a solution to that particular problem.
Right, and there's other things you can actually consider too. It's not just whether or not it's a solution. You can look to see whether or not it's something that you personally have to be the person that's handling. A lot of times, this is where people have to start considering their options in terms of delegating. There's no real successful business people I know of who don't have assistants. There are a few, but for the most part, any successful person that you could name in business, they have an assistant, if not more than one. So those are the types of tasks I try to tell people. If it isn't something that is actually generating revenue or generating new clients or something along those lines, then it's really something that you might want to consider delegating, especially if it's something that you don't like doing. So it's just then when you turn into the person that considers these tasks in those lights, you can start seeing where you can chunk out your day. And it really, like I said, you're now not only just managing your digital world, you're just managing, you're just going. You got a flow and everything's working, and you can figure out what you want to keep, you can figure out what needs to go, and then you just have to figure out how to securely do it all.
Do we want to move on to the next slide that specifically talks about staying organized and start there?
Absolutely.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about how you recommend that we stay organized throughout our day. I mean, there's a lot that all of us are juggling, from physical paper that's getting handed to us to a never-ending stream of email to our smartphones and all the other various forms of communications that things may land in our lap at any given time.
Right, and it's really like I call it distractions. It's forced distractions. It's your emails, it's your telephone calls, it's the incoming, and it hits us, every single one of us, all the time. And it's really managing that. So, to get organized, it doesn't require any special tool or gizmo or software. First of all, I want to get that out of the way. Lots of people are probably giving a sigh of relief hearing me say that, because I talk to a lot of people who are not, quote, tech savvy. So they're happy to hear that. And, who needs more stuff that you need to deal with? And for that, I certainly hear you. But the other side of that is that there also means there's no magic bullet. So there is no tech, there is no gizmo, there is no gadget. And really what you need in order to get and keep yourself organized is, well, like you can have an email-capable phone, and that may help you in the process, but it's not going to be the thing that gets you there. What you actually need is a system. A system for, handling this massive amount of incoming from all the various locations, and it can't put you on overload. And that's, because when everything's overloaded, what happens? Obviously, it's not going to work the way that it's supposed to. And even taking email as an example, most people are overloaded by email, and their inboxes are full of hundreds, if not thousands, of messages. Now think of your email inbox like you would your postal mailbox. What would happen if you never took your mail in, sorted out the junk, and put the important stuff you needed to take care of somewhere safe and known? Your mailbox would be stuffed and overflowing. You'd miss the important announcements, and you'd probably miss paying a few bills as well. And from there, it's just all kinds of negative fallout that happens. Unlike your email inbox, your postal inbox only holds so much stuff. So invariably, the mail is going to spill it over onto your stoop and start laying it in your bushes, and you'll be forced to deal with the issue. In essence, your inbox is like your postal mailbox, except it gets much, much more stuff delivered to it all the time. And if you think about it, email only ever gets more. Every email address only gets more. The more time, the more email. The more use, the more email. And there's administration and maintenance time built into each email you get into that inbox. You not only have to take the time to check on the email, you also have to maintain and update your spam filters, and you get to, on top of it, pay for storage. So your inbox is full of messages. And when you have way too much stuff, you can't really see what's important. Nothing gets the attention it needs. Everything falls through the cracks and overlooked. And then what happens? You got wasted communications, wasted opportunities, and a lot of stress because you know stuff's slipping through and emergencies are cropping up all the time. And then here's the kicker. We're not just dealing with email. That was just dealing with email. There's voicemails, client and other work-related calls, faxes, administrative duties, getting the billing done, paying the bills. And if you don't give the proper amount of conscious endeavor by performing any or all of these duties and doing them well, literally you can put yourself out of business. So this really makes being overloaded really hazardous. It's hazardous to the health of your business, and it certainly adds to the stress that one feels as a business owner. So, what do you need? There we go. You've got it up. You need to create a workflow to suit your processes. And this kind of may not seem
look like the chart on the screen.
Yes. Well, you know what? It may or may not. And there's lots of different ways you can actually organize this kind of stuff. Some people like to do it with these little charts and things. Some people like to do it lists. Some people like to do it with digital organizers. I remember Ernie the attorney said one was Scrivener. He wrote a review for my e-zine called Scrivener. And it's like little digital index cards, and you can move them all over the place, and you can reorder them, and you can organize them. So however it is that whatever you use to get yourself, your workflow organized, one thing you need to know is you need to organize it. You need to write it down. You need to consider it. So let's see, why is that? That's because, you know what, I want to be able to tell you there's one thing you can go sign up for. Go over here, sign up for this, and you're going to be good. The problem is each business and each practice is set up differently. I've been doing this a long time. Like you said, I've been doing this 10 years. I've talked to lots of firms, different people, different business processes, different requirements, different tech, different devices, different operating systems. You know, there's a myriad of choices that one can make in order to make their business or their practice run. So you really, you know, you have to kind of work it all out for yourself. You know,
and I do think that that's a huge factor. Is, you know, there is no one system for anyone. I think it would be a lot easier, and it would be, you know, like the golden ticket if there was just one system that we could all use and everything would be perfectly organized. But it comes down to what is that fit for you and your business? What type of business do you have? What type of person are you? Are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Do you have a family? Are you running around doing a lot of other activities outside of your professional life that also require additional organization? So it really does come down to what is going to work for you. And I always like to remind my clients of one thing, and that is that you have to find a system that works for you, because if it doesn't work for you, then it's not going to work, and you're not going to adopt it, and you're not going to continue. It's like going on a crazy diet and exercise kick if you haven't worked out in like 3 years. You know, you're not going to go to the gym 2 times a day and eat salad every single meal if that hasn't been your habit or your routine. So, you know, start off figuring out what those potential processes and what that ideal workflow is going to be for you, for your lifestyle, for your business, for your profession, and start there, and then baby step your way into it and make sure that you're on board with those changes before you set down a path that could potentially not end up well if you don't buy into 100% of the change.
True, but you know, I also like to tell people, and that's really great, you know, again, everybody has to figure it out for themselves. How I figured that out was, you know, like I said, 10 years, long time, my business started growing exponentially, and once it went past me and about 7 attorneys, and I was going crazy and, you know, had to start expanding, and, you know, really, you have to really think about where you want the end to be. In the end, if there was only so much time in your day, or there was only so much effort you wanted to apply, where do you want to apply it? And then you really have to try to plan backwards to try to get rid of everything else. But you really have to start with knowing what everything else is. And unfortunately, I've worked for lots of attorneys in real life, and, you know, piles are great, but they're certainly, I know you know what's in every single file in your office, but that's not the best organizational system that there is for the information.
You're not always in your office.
Right. So you really need to move on. But you also, again, I also know attorneys that don't feel comfortable using email, but they have no problems with a fax and a cell phone. You know what? Their workflow can be created through those processes as well. So again, it's just really figuring out what processes need to be handled, what can be handled securely, and then working towards the end game of getting rid of almost everything else other than like I said, the stuff that's going to generate revenue, the stuff that is actively generating revenue, or the things you enjoy. Because really, if you're not working towards that goal, you're not working towards the all-elusive work-life balance. Because if you're not working towards finally, in the end, enjoying yourself, what are you working for? You might as well go work for somebody else.
Absolutely.
I remember when there was this one quote, but I don't want to know if I'm mangling it. I usually do with quotes, but it's like, who's the maniac you're working for? Like, some people go out and you're working out in the workforce and you work for other employers, and you know what? They're maniacs. I know. I've worked for them. But if you're doing it to yourself, like really now, you have to really kind of take a step back. So see where you want yourself in the end game and then move forward from there. For me, one of the things, like I said, getting things done was an instrumental book for me. I read that. The E-Myth Revisited is kind of another good one. But for getting organized, it was getting things done. But really, I tried to apply it so much that I was so busy trying to sync all my lists and do things exactly as prescribed that I really was failing myself. And I wasn't getting my stuff done. And it didn't work for me, and I kind of got a little discouraged, and I was thinking, all this money and all this time I'm spending learning other people's stuff, and I don't know if this stuff, it doesn't work for me. And it's like, what if there's nothing out there? And that's basically why I started creating my own. And that's when I realized, if I can create my own, you all can create your own too. But you need to start somewhere, and you need to start from structure. So the structure is, you need to figure out what it is you want to keep, what it is you want to go, and what it is that actually is getting done. Write it all down. Getting things done taught me that. Write it all down. You have to start somewhere, write it. Get a notebook, date every page, write the stuff in it. Works for me.
And that'll also help you identify areas where you can improve, like we discussed at the beginning of the session as well.
Right. So if we want to move on, because, I thought we'd be zipping a little bit more.
It's okay,
because you really do, you want to streamline. Right, no, I know. You want to streamline your technology. I remember back in the day, I'm not really that old, but technology really has advanced quite a lot in the past 10 years. I remember back in the day, people would carry pagers and 2 cell phones and a Palm device, and it was like, they looked like they were, the guy that carries too many keys on his belt. And all I could think to myself was, you have to, make sure you don't drop it. You have to make sure that you charge it all the time. You have to make sure that you're connected to it all the time. Really, do you want to have to care for 3 or 4 devices? Why would you want to do that? Then you have to make sure it's all staying secure. If it's loaded onto a mobile device, then it needs to be, and it's information that should be considered confidential and, an attorney work product type of thing, then you really need to make sure that it's just not easily accessible by, oh, I forgot it, and look, this person picked it up. Oh, look, they're reading it now. That's really not where you want, And in streamlining your technology, basically what you're doing is you're going to narrow down to the fewest possible points where access to that information is available. And when you do that, then you severely limit the chances that something ill toward will happen. You really want to streamline for a couple of reasons. You don't want to pay for everything that's connected. You don't want to have to carry charge for, and you don't want to have to secure every instance of every piece of equipment that you may ever use. Of course, you can in certain ways, but why do something 5 times when you only need to do it twice?
Absolutely. And you also avoid fragmented information. And to just kind of give you an example of how it can easily happen to any of us, you have multiple phone numbers for a client. You're using a contact management system. 2 of the phone numbers are in there. The other one is saved on your iPhone or cell phone, or it's written down on a Post-it note somewhere in your office, and you're miles away and you can't get to it. It's just a matter of always having everything at your fingertips in one place, coming back to that point about being organized and just keeping everything together. So streamlining all of your information and everything that you need has a lot of benefits and can help you throughout your professional career, just being on top of things and being able to turn items around a little bit faster.
Right, because it's kind of like the best thing that technology does and the worst thing is it keeps us connected. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It keeps us connected so that I try to use it like in the good way, so that my flow is still working. You know what it is? If I need to be connected to email because I'm expecting to get comments back from somebody on something, then I will be more connected to my email today than I may be tomorrow. It's about what I need for this particular given situation and to streamline everything, because you really you want to try to do what you need to do when you need to do it, and you don't want to be connected all of the time because, as we'll talk a little bit later on, that's not really a good way to go through life either. But we want to move now.
Yeah. And talking a lot about email.
Yeah. Email. It's kind of the bane of almost everybody's existence. I hear it from everybody. I mean, everybody. They don't, and I was the same way. I mean, let's say Andrea at legaltypist.com has been an active email address over a decade. Could you imagine how much spam it would be getting if I wasn't managing my spam filter really well?
I am actually afraid to even imagine what you could possibly be getting and then trying to dig through all of that.
I actually had started training my spam filter at the domain level probably more than 8 years ago. So anything that started coming through that had any ill-toward types of keystrokes in them, automatically so, and then it just over time a spam filter becomes almost algorithmic. How would I say that? I think you know what I mean. Thank you. A little point by there. So, so email is, like I said, it's just this thing that kind of goes on and on and on. And one of the things that I learned is that you can't use it as a holding spot. I have a wonderful knack for remembering 52 things at once. You know, my real job, life, profession, I was an executive legal assistant who worked for several very busy, very high-paid individuals, and I was required to have a certain level of care, as I'm sure you understand.
Yes.
So, you know what? But I had to manage everything for them because they didn't have the time to be managing for themselves. But so I needed to develop ways, but that made me able to multitask because this was before really email became as active as it did. Let's remember, email was never meant to be used to pass along the volume of information that it actually does. So it's just exploded. And I always, whenever I have everyone's attention, I like to say email is more of a postcard than it is a sealed envelope. So anything that you pass along via email is just writing it on a postcard and throwing it in the mail. Actually, it's less secure than that because at least the people that touch it when you throw it in the mail have been cleared through, you know, security and stuff. When you send messages over the internet, there's no rhyme or reason to what wires, switches, and routers that information passes. So really, it's not a secure medium. It works, but it wasn't intended to send definitely not secure information. So.
Absolutely.
Right, we're going to talk.
It's a great analogy.
Right. And we're going to talk about, you got to keep your inbox clean. I like to say it's like your kitchen sink. You need, stuff comes in and it needs to get cleaned and taken care of, and then it needs to get dried off and it needs to get put back where it goes. And when your kitchen sink is empty and all sparkly, it always makes you feel so good. And when it's full of stuff that you know is just drying and caking on, you got to get to it. It's one of those things that nags at you. It's just a whole different perception. And the same as when you have a clean inbox. When you have an inbox that's full of thousands of messages, you know there's stuff in there that you've forgotten, but for the life of you, you just know it's in. You don't know what it is. You know, it's so much information we're bombarded with every day. You can only process and filter so much. So if you don't have a way to manage and triage it and put it into places where you can hold it, then you're going to be missing out on the special stuff. You're really going to not. You're going to be missing out on a lot of things, and you're probably going to be under a lot of stress. One of the first things, you know, everybody says it, so you have to get your inbox down to 0. How do you do that? You need to look at each message, and you need to determine what you need to do with it, and then you need to do it. I tell people there's a few ways of cheating because I hear a lot of, oh, I have thousands of messages. I can't go through every single one of those. It's going to take me days. and I know. And you know what? It's kind of like when I say to people when they decide to upgrade from filing paper to scanning, or to going from not having any kind of naming conventions for documents to having naming conventions. You have to pick a point, and you need to start, and you need to move forward. If that means you need to take that inbox and clear it out and put it in old, make a folder and make it old inbox and throw everything in it for now, that's fine. If that's how you need to get to zero to start, but then you need to have a way moving forward to make sure that you don't get those buildup of messages anymore, that you're processing everything as it comes through. Because it's not, you know, the whole idea is to get it down to zero and to keep it at zero, but to make sure that everything that's coming through it is actually being acted upon if it needs to be acted upon, filed if it needs to be filed, and of course tossed if it should be out of here. One thing I like to tell people, keep their inboxes clean. I see people say a lot about rules and making things auto. I'm never about anything auto. I think everybody knows that. Outlook, I'm an Outlook user. I don't know which version it was, but at some point I would be hearing the sounds I'd set up for these rules, and where the thing was supposed to go it wouldn't be, and you know, it just kind of started doing phantom stuff all by itself. And then I had to do a reinstall, and guess what? I had to remake up all those rules. And when you're accustomed to having rules doing stuff and it's not doing it anymore, it's just, again, one more thing, if and not even if, when your machine fails you, because it will happen. I always say that one too. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Your machine is going to not work one day. So take whatever precautions you need right now, and that'll lead us right perfectly into the next slide, actually.
And one thing about the inbox rules as well, just because I learned this the hard way, I would definitely double check the settings on your smartphone, because depending upon how much email you receive, I personally receive a significant amount, so it can only hold so much at a time, but it will also not always display folders and archive folders. So if you do have rules set up where certain things are being automatically filed away into folders, and you can only view those folders from your local machine or your desktop, right, you may not even know that those messages are unread or need attention if you're out of the office looking at email on your phone. So just one thing to be aware of, you know, talking about syncing all of that technology, and as you build those file structures or however you are setting up those rules, just make sure that you double check and make sure that any unread messages you can still view from wherever you are.
Right. Well, again, I would say take the automatic rules out of it. When you take the automatic rules out of it, you actually elevate it to a process that's independent of the client that you are using. So it doesn't matter if you're Outlook, Apple's, whatever, Gmail, I'll talk about it, but you elevate it. So make yourself the rule maker. And that's what I actually was the system that I created to help myself. It's called DAFT. It's available from my website, legaltypist.com/, all capital letters, DAFT. It stands for Defer, Act, File, and Toss. And it's just a simple process by which you can, it's not just for digital, it works really well with email, it works really well with anytime you're ever confronted with something that you need or may need to act upon. So whether that's a piece of paper, whether that's incoming email message, whether that's a telephone call, you can apply the DAFT principle right to it. And instead of you being interrupted by stuff you shouldn't be interrupted anymore, you can schedule it. It's just an organizational process. So you can head on over to my website if you want. You can anybody can download that. It's free. Okay. And now, protecting yourself online and on the go. Many people who know me, who may or may be listening, know that digital security is one of the things that I hold near and dear. I've been interviewing people about digital security probably about 6 years I started with it, and I've always had to keep a mind's eye towards keeping an attorney's client work product secure because of the type of business that I'm in. If I can't attest to my clients and prove to them that the processes I have in place assures the high standards required of legal when it comes to the confidentiality of this type of information and data, I'm not going to get hired. So it's you know, something, but it's also something personally that I hold very near and dear. In my personal privacy, I don't have geolocation available on my mobile device. You know, there's services I won't sign up for based on it. And you know, everybody has to go through and figure their stuff. But I'm just going to write here, you know, that's just how I know a lot of this stuff. And here I'm going to just give you some quick tips that, you know, that'll help you protect yourself when you're working the web or when you're on the go. And one of the best ones is use passwords. Use them on all your mobile devices. Use them on the operating system of anything that you can connect to, or which stores either your client information, or when I'm talking to people who aren't attorneys, a lot of times they don't consider this, but credit card information, social security numbers, you know, any of this type of information, if you're going to be storing it or accessing it, you need to know that, you know, you're taking every reasonable precaution that you can in terms of your in terms of the security. And one of the best ways to do that, of course, is to make sure that anytime you have to actually activate any device, put in a password. And another great one is don't connect to public Wi-Fi spots. If you have a mobile device, it has a cellular connection. It's, you know, that's what it is. Use that connection. Figure out a way to use your actual device if you can't use it as, you know, it's not. There's a lot of MiFi and Wi-Fi capable mobile devices now where you can connect your laptop through your personal mobile device and it will connect to the internet for you. So that's a secure connection. If you're paying for the connection is secure. So you want to try to only connect through an account that belongs to you. And then of course you only all want to make sure that, you know, you're connecting through HTTPS // because that means that the actual connection from your device to the web server, that little tunnel of information there, is encrypted. And of course, if you're, you know, online banking or PayPal or connected to any financial institutions, then it's, you know, they're required. But if you're doing anything, and, you know, even putting in your own credit card information, if you're buying something off of a website and you look up and the information that they're asking for is not through the HTTPS, do not give it. That is not a secure page. So you really want to make sure that you're careful with regard to that.
Absolutely.
Of course, you don't want to share any of your personal information in chat rooms. People tend to get to know people online, and then they get a little familiar and sometimes a little too much. It's not just your friends and family that are looking at whatever you're publishing. There's lots of strangers looking at it too.
Absolutely.
So some of those strangers are gathering information about you. Don't make it easy for them.
And also take advantage of any services like Apple offers a great service called Mobile Me. If you own a Mac or an iPad or an iPhone, and I know that Android also has some similar services as well, but basically what happens is if you ever, let's say, lose a device, leave your laptop in a cab, have a device stolen, you can go to Mobile Me and you can completely wipe the entire device and also prevent someone else from using it. So if you do have mobile devices, look into those services and please take advantage of setting them up, because it's always when it's not expected that you have a device that's stolen or lost or could potentially have confidential data or information on it, and now you need to be able to completely wipe that device without actually having it in your hands.
Right. That's always a great thing, but I actually like to caution people, actually download and put as little information on the mobile device as possible. When you think about it, the least amount of information that it holds physically on it, the safer you are. People, and again, this might come into people who are too connected. There's people that are constantly taking pictures and posting this and posting that. You know, I'm online a lot. I'll admit it. I am online a lot. But like I said, you want to be careful, and you don't want to overuse. And one of the things is when you load all of this information, like nobody understands this one, but pictures actually store geolocation. So that means every single time you take a picture, in the metadata of that picture is your geolocation. So if they go through the pictures, they can figure out where you've been. Not that saying, you know, like I'm not paranoid or anything like this, but people don't know this. And if you're posting those pictures online, especially, people don't know this, because now these pictures are publicly available, so other people who know it are now taking a look at it. Like I said, when you post this stuff online, once it's out there, it doesn't come back. And it's always out there, and it's not just your friends and family. I don't care if it's on a closed social network or not. Anybody can forward anything to anyone. And all it takes is one wrong click, and whatever you have is out. And like I said, just, don't. So be careful. And it's not just your online and when you're on the go. There's also like the hardware part of it, the actual equipment that you're connecting with. And I know people can get touchy on this subject. It's kind of weird. It's like they get wedded to a particular brand. And my philosophy is use whatever works for you, but just be certain that whatever you are using is as secure as it possibly can be. Again, using the passphrase, you won't, when you all of a sudden feel around, look in your pocketbook, feel at your hip, you're like, look on the car seat, you're like, wait a second, where is it? There's going to come that time where you're going to realize, I lost it. It's not here. What happened to mine? And you get that hole in the pit of your stomach, like, oh, I was writing my personal journal on it. Like, oh, perhaps that was, you're going to want to make sure that you have at least a 4-digit password on that mobile device. That's what they recommend, 4 to 6 at least. And lately I've been seeing them say double up one of the numbers so they can't when you wear out the spots on the keyboard, apparently. I don't know that I agree with that one. But, I learned this one from a friend, actually. He owns an alarm company. And his phone at Jones Beach, the theater here on Long Island, must have fell off, or he left it on his bump, whatever, but some kids got it. And it was very bad. They were calling his contacts in it, and they were doing kid stuff. Now, after a while, he got a few phone calls, like they called his brother or something like that, and he couldn't find them. He couldn't find them, so if he would have just had a simple password, that would have thwarted the casual passerby who picks up your device if it still has a charge. So put the password on it. And put the password on anything you have that has an operating system. When I sit down at my desk, if I'm not working from my laptop, from my touchpad, every single time, fires up. There it is. Put in the password. Why? Because I never know. It's not that big of a deal. So. And then, of course, with your password, I kind of say passphrase. I think it was Ben Shore that taught me that one. You want to go at least 8 keystrokes, except for on your phone. They say 4 is acceptable on your phone. You want to do at least 8 keystrokes combining letters, symbols, and numbers. And characters. So I call them passphrases because I like to make little words out of 8 and 2, and when you think of it that way and you think of words, but you just substitute numbers for letters, it's a little bit easier. People forget passwords. I don't use any password manager. I see people out there that do that. Kind of very skeptical of anything that's storing all of my passwords. That must mean a lot of people really want to break into that. So it just makes me nervous by the pure nature of what it does. Which kind of brings us to the next one, which is web-based security.
Yes. And web-based security is a little bit different than traditional hardware or even mobile devices that we use, in that security is primarily being managed, and you're putting that trust in your choice of provider. So what are some of the things that you can do yourself to make sure that any system that you're using that is web-based is secure, but what are also some of the things that you can look for in a provider?
Well, one of the first things I like to tell people is where's the physical location of the servers holding the data? Because again, there is a physical component to any web-based service. Any part of the web, there's a physical component to it. So if you don't know where the physical servers are, then you have no idea under what conditions that particular location holds privacy or anything else, because it could be, if it's hosted anywhere in the world, it's changed, everywhere. So I like to tell people, make sure that the servers are located within country. So for me and for my business, everything has to be located on U.S. soil. And that doesn't mean that a company can't use a third party, like, the Amazons, the really big guys, because there are options even with the big guys to make sure that the information is resident only on Amazon's U.S.-based server. So you have to just do a little research. You have to make sure that you understand where the servers are. You have to make sure that you understand who has physical access to those servers. One bad employee, and it's not good news. So you want as few people as possible, and you want to make sure that it's in some kind of locked, not a room that everybody in the company can hang out in. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely, and these are completely expected, or they should be expected questions on the provider side. Any reputable provider or company that is providing a secure product that is web-based should be able to answer these questions. You can come to them and you can ask them where is your data housed, which of your employees have access to it, what are your internal security procedures. You know, they're not going to hand you a map of their network and the keys to the kingdom, but they'll be they should be more than happy to explain to you how they will be protecting your data, and that should be expected by you as a customer from the provider being able to answer those questions. If they can't answer those questions or they refuse to, that would definitely throw up a red flag and maybe cause some concern.
Well, I would love to say that only throw up a red flag and cause some concern, but unfortunately in the legal business that would have to be running out of the race. There are 7 questions that I generally ask, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there's a blog post on it, so I'll forward that to you. But these are some of them. One, where are you located? Are you geo-redundantly backed up? That one kind of throws some service providers for a loop, or at least it used to. It's a little more common now since there was a couple of rolling blackouts across the country in the past 4 or 5 years. So basically what it says is, not only are you backing up, and you're backing up in real time, but that if something happens to the electrical grid in this part of the country, that the backup is located on a different grid. So it's geo-redundantly backed up. That's a good one. Who has the physical access? Do you have access to the information offline? Does that mean that, can you manipulate everything and then when you log back online, everything automatically goes? That's a bit of a tough process from web-based programming to configure, given everybody's different operating systems and configurations. So I don't necessarily think that, but I think that you should be able to have a backed up and somewhat usable database, we'll call it, whether that's a CSV file, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet, something where the information can be extracted out of the web-based application and perhaps plugged into something other should you choose to not use it anymore.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying it should be seamless, because even when people change desktop applications, there's nothing out there that says, oh, just plug this in here for that there and everything will populate automatically. It doesn't work that way. So, but at least there should be some way for you to carry your information on you and look at it reasonably, not necessarily having to connect to the web-based data if for some reason you're not. There could be a lot of reasons. There's a lot of rural places that don't have reliable internet connections, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have a web-based application in order to store and house this information, but just to be on the safe side, have something that they can download and work offline.
Absolutely. A very common question that we hear about our web-based case management platform is, what would happen to my data, or what would be the process be if, let's say, Total Attorneys was acquired by another company, which happens all the time, especially with a lot of smaller providers. They can be acquired by larger companies, and it's just always good to know that even in the event of an acquisition, or if they were to close their doors, how can you get in and export their data? What is their policy around giving your data back to you or transferring your data into the hands of the other company that could potentially be acquiring them? So just some scenarios that you don't always think of but could potentially cause a barrier between you and your data, which you'd never want to have happen.
Right, and you know what, it's one of those considerations. You either have, in your web-based provider, you have to be able to trust that, all of these requirements of you as an attorney or a legal professional are met. It's like I said, it's something that you need to consider as web-based, but not necessarily 100% accessible all of the time. So if you just factor that in, already know going in, only you know how reliable your web connection is. Only you know how fast it is. Only you know what you connect from. Provided you can connect securely to one of the web-based. If you're not somebody who, like I like to say, if you can't rate yourself a solid 8 on a geek scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to the security of the equipment that you're housing client or credit card or Social Security information, call a professional. Call a professional or consider a web-based option because, again, a web-based option, now you're relying and outsourcing, but you have to vet them well. And with the questions like where are you located, who has access, all the things that we just discussed, if they can accurately, honestly, and to your specifications answer those questions, then perhaps you can utilize that and not have to worry about the security aspect as much as you would, say, on desktop resident software.
Yes. And we will include a link to Andrea's blog post on those 7 questions as soon as we send out our recap email to everyone who has participated in today's session. So you will be receiving that information after the session. And moving on to personal mobile device security. So this is somewhat new for some of us, and it can be complicated if you make it so, but it can also be managed very simply by, as you mentioned earlier in today's session, just starting with don't put that much information on your device to begin with. So maybe we can start and build off of that.
That's perfect. The more that you put on it, the more chances are that if anything happens to it, it's really going to mess you up because you don't have it anymore, because sometimes people rely on their personal mobile device and that's the only place, say, where they put their full contacts, or that's the only place where they have their full calendar. They don't sync it with anything. They don't do anything. Once that thing goes, it's like, oh my goodness, all those dates. It's really, it could be very detrimental. I like to tell people, don't go crazy with the apps. Apps. People will create, I don't know, my twin brother could probably create an app. Does that mean he should? I don't know. Why are you downloading that on your device? I don't know who that was that made it. This thing's had 35 downloads, but you're going to test it on your device? What happens if your device messes up? So people have a tendency, and then what happens if this app interacts with that app, and, oh, well, they didn't know. Almost 9 times out of 10, these are beta apps. Not really, again. And then they have tracking. A lot of these apps we're finding now have this built in, but nobody knew about it, tracking kind of stuff. And really you want to allow this type of technology onto what you're trying to have as little secure information, but it's going to have something, or it's not going to be useful. So you really, keep those apps down to a minimum. And the physical security, nobody thinks about that part. Nobody gets cases. I can tell you just as sure as I can tell you whatever computing device you're using is going to not function one day. You're going to drop your personal mobile device from a height a little too high. It's going to happen. You're not going to help yourself, and then you're going to wish you put that acrylic case I'm telling you to get right now. Amazon.com has cases for every possible device out there, and I do say get the acrylic one. It's really, you can get the leathery kind of ones, but they don't do the same kind of shock absorbing as the acrylic ones that I think so. That's another thing when it comes to security. You want to make sure that you can keep using it, so definitely invest in a case. And like I said earlier, you need to make sure that you have a password. Don't tell me that every single time you want to check your email that you do 50 times an hour. You don't want to have to put in, and don't use 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, please. Be a little creative at least. So yes, you're going to have to put in these digits over and over again, but again, it's going to happen. It's going to get lost, and you will feel a lot better in the pit of your stomach if you don't think that anybody sitting close by to you could now be rifling through your full contact list.
Absolutely.
Or your banking information, or any of these other things that people download and can easily access from anywhere, which kind of freaked me out a little.
And absolutely, and pay attention to the alerts. I mean, we all enjoy having a smartphone and having apps and all those other things, but don't just say yes or allow every time you get an alert on your screen. It's asking to use your location. It's asking for permission to share your information with another app that same company might own, or another app that a partner of theirs might own. So don't always, just like when you're working locally on your computer and it says hit yes or next, you don't want to just go ahead and do that to keep flying through whatever you might be doing on your phone. Pay attention and make sure that you're making a conscious decision to share that information or to not do so.
Right. One of the main things I would say is pay attention, pay attention. If you don't know delete. if it's really that important and somebody needed to get you, they'll try you again. And if you don't know the name of something, like all of these things where it's like, oh, we're trying to confirm this, there's no service, web-based or otherwise, out there that's going to send an email to you that says, here, and now log in through this link here and give us your name and password. That is almost guaranteed to be an identity theft mechanism. So certainly, you know, if you ever receive any kinds of these alerts, you want to open up an independent browser, if possible from an independent connecting device. Log in securely into your web-based account and look for a message from the web-based service in your whatever type of client portal, rather than connecting to it from that thing. Just delete. If there's a message, if the message is legit, it'll be in your web-based account.
Yeah.
So,
and
be careful. Pay attention.
Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And that's a great segue into our next slide, which is issues with freebies. And Andrea, I know you and I share a lot of common opinions on this particular topic. Free is not always good. It can be great if you want to try new things and you're not investing that much time or data or secure information into something, but pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, because freebies oftentimes have stuff written in the small print that don't always notice and can be dangerous if glanced over.
Right, and really, first of all, there is no free service out there that says, and if we stop working tomorrow, you can all sue us for a lot of money, and you're going to get paid for it.
It doesn't?
There would be, I mean, seriously, because you took the entire time to read that TOS that was in 2-point font and seemed to go on forever, word for word, right?
When all you wanted was the Gmail account.
Yeah. Well, when all you wanted was whatever the freebie was. Oh, sure, I'll take that. And don't get me wrong, I was there. I love to test tech. You know me. That's one of the fun things that I like about what I do. And I like to make sure that things do what they say they're going to do, because a lot of times they don't. And you know, I had a couple of computer crashes. The blue screen of death. The oh my God, what did I do? Why do you think it is? I say, before you download anything, before you connect, do system restore. If you're going to download an app, or if you're going to add a new piece of desktop resident, whatever, just clean up your computer. You're not doing this because you got 18 things open on your window and you just got to have it right now. No, you got to make a conscious decision, close everything down so you have no conflicts. I like to do a clean. Do everything, do a cleanup, and then do a system restore point, then do the download and the install. Why do I say to do that? Because sometimes when you download and install something, it messes up everything else. And nobody knew it would, because nobody knew what was on your machine when they created it. So it's like, again, and they don't have any liability because it was a freebie. So protect yourself, and if you have that system restore point and anything messes up, guess how 9 times out of 10 that's going to work for you. So you just have to go to your system restore point and boop, everything was back as though that never was in there. Whew, save myself, ooh, that would have been scary kind of feeling. And of course with free, you don't know what they're doing with your data. I remember when Constant Contact first came around. Well, I hope I'm kind of dating myself a little. And then there were other services, because it was kind of really the trailblazing the first. And then there were other services that came along, and that's when I started realizing what all of these freebies were kind of doing. Basically, because I'm reading the terms of service, of course, they're saying, we are not going to share your information with anybody else. We wouldn't do that. Nowhere does it say they're not going to use it for their own purposes. And when I would contact them and say, well, I have a list, but it's a list of attorneys, and it's, I can't say that it's okay for you to send them a separate email or whatever. You can't market to these guys or anything. And they would all be like, well, we're giving it to you for free. All right, I got to go pay for that tech. Let me go find a tech that I can use for that. So along with free, and if it stops working, who are you going to call? You get hacked out of your Google account. Or somebody worse, spoofs like they're you and sends out all kinds of phishing attempts or whatever. Who do you know at Google? Yeah. So, and where do you know that Google is housing your account's information? Do you know that that's only here, or is that somewhere other? So these are all a lot of, and then there's the ownership. There's some actual terms of service out there that basically say by using our service, you give us the right to do anything that we want with whatever you give us. Thank you very much. So because
which I'm
nobody
sure
actually
none of our clients would appreciate.
No. Well, nobody would appreciate it. You know, I like it. People all, you know, I talk to a lot of other people who do what I do, virtual assistants, and, you know, help other businesses set things up. And they all kind of giggle at me like, Andrea, we don't work with the kind of information you work with. And I always go, yeah, you do. It doesn't matter what business you're working with. If you're working with the business's contact list, or if you're working with their spreadsheets, or if you're working with their processes in any way, shape, or form representing that business, then you absolutely have to hold this information as secure as if it were me and my attorney, because that's just the only acceptable level of confidentiality between an assistant, you know, and the people they work for. So that's just how I feel about it. Maybe I'm old school, though. Probably.
Read the terms of and conditions of any application that you may be considering before you jump in and start uploading data in there.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to that balance of accessibility. So we want everything in the cloud. We want to be able to collaborate with other professionals using Google Docs and you know, the collaboration tools that are available to us. But really, what does that accessibility mean to us and our life, and how do you create some balance there?
Well, first of all, I call Google the Borg. And people can giggle at me or whatever, but when, you know, Google is indexing information, and I always say it's very hard to make a tech not do what it was created to do. And Google's core purpose is to index every keystroke, every piece of information it can ever index as it can. So that's why I say it's like the Borg. And I'm not saying it's evil in purposes. I mean, they did figure out how to market to us based on the actual words in our Gmail accounts, and, you know, bravo for them for figuring all of that out. It's a little creepy. But again, the fact that it's indexing everything to me means that you really shouldn't be using it if you're an attorney doing client work product kind of stuff. And there are people who do not agree with me, and that's okay. And I don't want to get any kind of hate now. As I said, if you feel comfortable using it and that's what you use, then I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to say that this is my position on it. So. That said, when I'm talking about balance, Google Docs, one of the things I found about some of these collaborative open source types of technology is they're not as robust as your desktop resident counterparts that have been around for many, 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 many moons, and that they don't really play well or nicely with those desktop resident counterparts. So if I want to actually download something off of a Google Doc and I want to import it into a desktop resident word processing program and I want to manipulate it the way that I would a regular document, that's probably not going to happen because it's just not going to download properly. It's going to insert whatever. It's just not really going to. So it's not really the best tool for the job when it comes to that. But with balancing accessibility, it's really about working when you want to work, but understanding that there's time when you shouldn't be working. So it's about understanding when, like you said, finding the time and figuring out when best works for you. Are you a morning person? Are you, do you find yourself running around at the end of the day? And basing your schedule and your accessibility around that. So if you're working with other people and you're a 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. person and the people that you're working with are around at, 11 o'clock at night, well, these are the types of considerations that you need to take into account to balance everything and to make sure that what you need is accessible to you when you need it, but you need to put active steps in between you and every Tom, Dick, and Harry that could ever want to get in touch with you ever. One of the things I see online is people are like, call me now, call me now. They've listed every telephone under the sun. And one of them is on the phone that's hanging on their hip. It's their personal number. It's the one that's coming right through to them. And it doesn't matter if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, it's coming through. You can't have that type of accessibility because it doesn't matter what type of business you're in. You need to filter out 90% of those calls, because you can't be constantly interrupted all the time. So again, it's all about balancing your need to be connected all of the time to what you need to process work whenever you want versus balancing how accessible you make yourself through your technology and process and systems choices to anybody and everybody.
Absolutely. And the next slide that we have in front of us it talks a little bit about that and the hazards of being connected. You know, it's great that I can be, 2,000 miles from the office or halfway around the world on vacation, and I can check my email and I can send documents and I can do all of those things. But there's also a sacrifice and a consequence that comes with that as well. You can only be on one phone at a time unless you're either very skilled or you don't talk that much. And, so having all of those constantly on and not just that, I mean, when does your body have time to rest and prepare for the next day of activity? It doesn't. And coming from someone who is a recuperated BlackBerry addict who used to sleep with it in the palm of my hand, literally. Now to being able to dock my phone on a charger, at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and that's kind of my line in the sand of, my workday is done. Now I'm going to rest. I'm going to do, family time and whatever else that I need to do to relax and prepare for the next day. And I feel worlds different and more prepared and just feel like I had that balance back in my life again. So it can be very hazardous. So, you need to put those lines in place, those boundaries, establish a schedule that you're comfortable with that suits the type of work that you do. And, also don't be afraid to set those expectations, which is our next slide.
Right. What I find from people who are connected all of the time is they tend to be instantaneous people. It's either the people who were never connected before and now are connected, or either it's so new to them they're so excited, or they've developed a habit of being immediately accessible, whether that's by telephone or that's by email, instant messaging. You need to limit yourself, and how it's not so much limiting yourself. You need to properly communicate how it is, the expectations that people can receive from you, and what you put out is what you will get back. If you are instantaneously taking calls, the second somebody sends you an email, you're responding from some device. You literally set the expectation that whenever this client needs something, you're going to be immediately available. And that's kind of how it works out for everybody, especially in the beginning, because when anybody starts their practice, they have more time than they do business. So, they're all excited and they want to be customer forward and all the rest of it. But the problem is, especially with legal clients, it's not something that's done in a week or even a month. Sometimes it's years later. So if you're successful in growing your practice, what's going to eventually happen with the client that you used to answer immediately? It's going to start taking you longer. So now how's this client going to feel? They're going to be like, wait a second, you used to be immediately available to me, and now it takes you 6 hours or a day to answer my email, and I'm lucky if I can get a phone call from you 2 days later, whereas you are doing your best to try to get everything done. But like you said, it's an information of overload, and now these are the expectations, and you've connected all of the time, so you've made yourself accessible. And the worst part about it is you set these expectations, and there's no way you can possibly continue to live up to them. And we all know what happens when a client's expectations aren't met. It's never a good thing for anybody when a business owner overpromises and underdelivers. So you really want to try to avoid that. And setting the expectations for yourself as well. Giving yourself some boundaries, giving yourself some guidelines, some protocols. I've been connected 10 years. I'm a Palm girl. I'm happy to say it. And, I haven't found a device yet that can, my device does everything your device can do, and I don't care what your device is. So it's been something that I've been working and I know how to use, and it works for me. But I also understood, that I can't have it next to my head. When I read that study that said that like 93% of people that have cell phones, use them for their alarm clocks and sleep with them next to it or in their bed, that can't be healthy. you have to disconnect. If you're not disconnected, you're connected all the time, and that means a part of you was always connected. Even if you're not thinking about it, there's a part of you that's always considering that part of you that's connected. So you burn out. You have to shut down. So for me, it started, first of all, boundaries. I went, from having it all the time down to 9 o'clock and down to 6 o'clock. And you know what? If somebody needs to get in touch with me and it's important, I can get in touch. You can get in touch with me. But for the majority of people that are getting in touch with me, business starts again at 9 o'clock tomorrow. Thanks for calling. Because that's how my clients understand it too. Anything today, to me, reasonable is business. Anything today, I'll get back to you tomorrow. If it's urgent, I'll do my best to get back to you sooner, just like anybody else would. And then I went to Sundays. Sunday would be the day that I have this whole spring cleaning procedure where I shut all my programs down and schedule everything that's kind of left over for the next week and go through a little bit of cleaning of my equipment, and then I turn it off. I actually have worked that into Saturday afternoons if I'm not up at the trailer. So, and then literally I'm off. So it works well. I like it. I have the ability to shut off whenever I want. And I can honestly say I didn't have that ability, let's say 8 years ago, 7 years ago. I already understood my personality type needed to disconnect. And now I see it in a lot of other people. So, especially BlackBerry people. I hate to say that against BlackBerry, but it really turned people into a bunch of twitchy people.
They call it the Crackberry for a reason.
They started calling it Crackberry, and then they came out with the phantom message or something like that, where you would literally, because you were so concentrating on it buzzing on your hip all the time, you would think that it buzzed, but it didn't. Yeah. So you were constantly checking something, but there was nothing there. I'm like, that is not good behavior.
No,
that's not productive.
And I know your clients will also appreciate the extra steps that you're taking to create that balance. You'll be more composed. You'll be more relaxed. You won't be so reactive to everything. And believe it or not, but not every single question merits a 30-second quick decision answer. It's okay to take a little bit of time and figure out the best approach to something. You don't need to instantaneously respond to every single inquiry that you receive. So, having that balance and creating some boundaries, and it will help you establish not only just that personal work-life balance, but also a level of calm and composure that flows throughout your day that everyone around you will appreciate.
Right. Right. It's an expectation. It's a known, and it's part of the process. And people like knowns. I read something the other day where the Bruins were celebrating, and they have these signs that are on the train platforms, the scrolling red signs, and it just said, thanks for using whatever, have a nice day. But it wasn't talking about, all the trains were messed up. There was huge problems. And it could have taken, 2 seconds to figure out how to put the messages through. And would it change the person standing on the platform? Would it change their life, to know that the train was going to be 45 minutes? Well, it wasn't like life or death information, but the person could decide whether or not they wanted to wait anymore, or they could go home and watch the celebration at home. So it technically, having the accessibility to the information would have been helpful. So, And it was the expectation of just leaving them hanging, not knowing what was going on, was worse than letting them know, even though it was not positive information, was basically the message.
And so in a nutshell, systems will save your sanity, and those 3 points that we began talking about at the beginning of today's session are, get organized, be safe, make sure that everything is secure, and set boundaries. And that's really what today's session was all about. And Andrea's blog is a great place for information about everything that we've talked about today. We'll include information on how to reach her and her websites, and check out her blog in the recap email that we'll be sending out to everyone who participated in today's session. And Andrea, we really can't thank you enough for all of your insights and sharing the experience that you've had over the last 10 years with us. It's been extremely helpful, and we really, really appreciate your time.
Again, thank you so much for having me. You and I, we chat so well. I always enjoy our conversations, and I enjoy sharing what it is that I know and helping other people, even if it's only taking little baby steps on the digital superhighway, whatever I can do to help make someone's journey less painful. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, well, it's always a pleasure, and we look forward to speaking with you again on Total Attorneys Power Chat. And Andrea's information is up on the last slide. If you'd like to reach out to her directly, feel free. We'll talk to everybody again soon, and thank you so much for attending today's Total Attorneys Power Chat.